Hello and welcome to the first episode of Texas Uncensored, featuring your host Rohan.
And Athosh.
In this podcast, we will be talking about a wide array of issues, including politics, current events, social trends, issues on campus, which is UT Austin, where we go, and many more topics.
And we hope that when you listen to our podcast, you're able to think about these ideas and themes on your own and come to your own opinion. Because while we are providing our own opinion and information regarding these topics, we don't want to just have followers like sheep. We want you to come to your own conclusions about the topics we talk about.
Yes. Just to further expand on that, a lot of the things we see on campus, I feel like a lot of the political division on campus is super representative of like the lack of progress that people seem to see in society today. Like you'll have people who come on campus with like a controversial idea, whether it be on whatever side of the political aisle, and instead of having like civil engagement with that speaker, you'll have people who want that speaker to go away. And on the other side, you'll have a lot of people, like I would say, especially on the right, who like to say that college campuses are like a bastion of like liberal ideas. College campuses like suppress conservative voices, but at the same time, there aren't any conservative representatives in any of these spaces, which I think contributes to like the extremism in the space. Right? Instead of like shunning the college campus, instead of like trying to say, college isn't worth it anymore for people. You should go to trade school. You should go to this. You should just start a business. Those are all great paths. But, at the end of the day, if you want to actually cause change in a space, you have to be in the space, right?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Plus, I feel like a lot of people will react against speakers and stuff because they don't see any other way to change their world around them. They see like these canceling and other social movements and like making a commotion as their only real way to affect the world. I think that's a really good point that conservatives don't engage as much in the college ecosystem as they should. And I know like we went to a talk the other day and they talked about how like in some disciplines you could go through your whole career as an academic and not meet a conservative because of like how slanted the academic world was towards conservatives and how they might be pushed out because of that inherent bias in academia.
True. So with that being said, we are going to move on to the topic of this episode, which is the proposed TikTok ban bill that's being passed. To be more precise, like a divestment bill. So it's a bill that forces ByteDance, which is the parent company of TikTok, to divest the company within like 6 months, I think. And then if they don't, then they get banned. So like, some people say it's like it's a ban in practice, meaning like they think that there's a less of a likelihood that TikTok actually gets sold.
Yeah, because like they think that China is not going to sell either the entire TikTok brand or the IP of TikTok, which is the algorithm and like the valuable part of TikTok.
Yeah. So they argue that it's like a censorship bill, and we're here to go over all the perspectives, give our own perspective, and go from there.
I guess drilling down into those perspectives, I think the main perspective that's being put forth by proponents in favor of the bill is this idea of national security and ensuring that China doesn't have access to Americans' data. I think that is an argument, especially because China has accessed TikTok data in the past in Hong Kong and to track Hong Kong protesters, but they've said nothing about accessing American information and identities. But I think it is definitely one part of why it's important to understand where your information is going, and what different sources or different brokers of data have access to your information. This thing with TikTok highlights. However, I don't think that national security should be the only reason that they're voting for a TikTok ban. I think it's misguided because they just want the data for themselves. Obviously, I think the U.S. government, instead of having it in the hands of the Chinese government, they'd rather be able to access all the data for themselves and probably use it for themselves, like we know that the U.S. government does with other American-based companies. Like they obviously have different ways of accessing user data.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I definitely agree with that because, like, there's two parts of this, right? So the national security actual argument, which I guess is like, you don't want a foreign adversary to control like the mechanism through which people receive information in your own country about stuff in your own country, right? And then there's also like the advertisement of that. So like, we've been fed like the national security talking point a lot, and I feel like Americans are very like dissuaded, on both sides of the aisle, about that argument because of like the Edward Snowden stuff, like the Julian Assange, like he's like he's I feel like isn't he like fighting a case to be extradited to the U.S. in the U.K. right now? I guess yeah. So since like people are so disaffected with that reasoning, I feel like it's kind of out of touch for like politicians to sell that as a talking point, even though like it is a genuine talking point, but framing it as national security, I don't know, it's kind of cringe, I guess.
Yeah, but I think like the other side of this argument obviously is that it is an attack on national security because I'm sure that many people that use TikTok got the like announcement like, hey, TikTok is being banned. Please call your representative and let them know what you think about it. And obviously, like based on what I've read and what I've seen, that had the opposite effect. It made TikTok, or the lawmakers wanted to ban TikTok more because it showed the influence that TikTok had on our national interests.
Yeah, that's true. To be fair, I guess like Facebook has tried to like a lot of these companies when stuff happens that they don't agree with. Like I remember a couple of years ago, Apple introduced some new privacy features on the iPhone. It's like they use like this like tracking method with cookies or something. So when you use the app for the first time or use a website for the first time, the website data is saved in your phone so you can access it like faster the next time you want to open the app. So like if you do like a experiment where you clear all your like history and cookies on your browser and you load all the websites you use, they will be like slower to load at the first time, and you load them again for the second time and it's faster because like the cookies are saved, so it knows like you access that site, you want to go to it frequently, right? So like Apple introduced a feature where it's like ask app to not track for all these apps and websites on the iPhone. So you can't track people outside of the app anymore without the permission of the user. So Facebook like protested this and said like, oh, this is gonna be so bad for like small businesses and stuff, which like obviously like not really great because like it's just a guise to try and keep like getting the information through that method. And also I guess like since it's now in the hands of the user had to give consent, so it's like propagandizing the user to give consent to get the data, right? So it's kind of the same thing where TikTok has an incentive to want to stay in the US, and also the TikTok user base also, like a lot of the like TikTok is like a big echo chamber of like hating on the politicians and stuff, which obviously is pretty justified. But
I mean I've seen a lot of like statistics that although TikTok doesn't have as many users as some of the other sites, it is where like when you use TikTok you spend the most time on there, like you by far compared to other social media sites, because of like how addicting it is and stuff like that. So I think people, although there may not be as many people using TikTok, the people who use it a lot more, and that also impacts how they view it.
Actually, one thing we should talk about is like putting aside the like whether it should be banned, whether it shouldn't be banned, like legally speaking, like what effect has TikTok actually like had on the U.S.? Like has it had a beneficial effect, or is it just like a bunch of like degenerate like posting and like racist stuff?
I mean, it's like the argument for social media is always like, oh, it like helps spread like social trends. It can propel like these like social justice movements and stuff like that, right? That's I think the strongest argument for social media. Like I read this piece by Jonathan Haidt, and it's like social media, because of like the ability for like different people to communicate with each other, it really deconstructs a lot of different systems, and it's like helped in that regard. But it doesn't help build up new systems in its place. So people are left with like without a feeling of security or trust in their institutions, right? Because a lot of people on social media they find these echo chambers like that are against the government from both the left and the right. Like people on the left, they're like the government isn't doing enough. Like we need to like all work together in our own like communities. We need to like establish like mutual aid and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then on the right is people like the deep state is tracking you. You go off the grid. You need to live in the mountains where no one can find you. And you can see like a lot of that. Although like there's like two radically different political ideologies, they arrive at the same point. Like the government can't be trusted because of social media.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I guess also another thing is like there's like a establishment, anti-establishment kind of division now in like political discourse that I think like all of these issues kind of play into. So like you have like it's like growing populism on the right and populism on the left. So like a lot of the MAGA people and like a lot of like the progressive, like very far left progressive type of people, like they're like observations of society are kind of the same. So like the institutions of the government are like a lot very corrupt. Like, you know how Vivek Ramaswamy, he said like we need to go the federal agencies, like the bureaucrats and like the what's the term he uses, like bureaucratic
the wokeism.
No, it's like the he was talking about this on the Flagrant podcast. It's like the managerial class.
Oh yeah.
The managerial class, and then like on the left, the left-wing criticism would be like you know the institution of like capitalism or like the institution of
and like how the institutions are rooted in protecting like capital first and companies first rather than helping like the citizens, and like especially in regards to like healthcare, I think is like the main focus of like the left and like getting nationalized healthcare, which they would see as more better effectiveness than what we have right now.
Yeah, something I've actually like I read about like a while back is like it's how like social media has changed the like the external perception of the United States. So like before like Facebook and stuff, before like people could record videos with their phone and like post it and stuff, like a lot of the perception of America from people abroad would be from American movies. So like it'd be like they'd have these like themes of America, like the school bus or like the locker rooms or like you know the things that like a staple American high school has, or like New York City, like Spider-Man, stuff like that. So like a lot of the perception of America from people outside was super exaggerated to like the movie level where like it's like very romanticized, right? But then like one of the factors that led to like the perception of America going down in like foreign countries, which I think it has like overall since like the 90s and stuff. A lot of the factor contributing to that has been like people realizing like, oh, America's not just like this utopia of like, you know, cool media and like culture and like stuff like you see in New York City, or like these certain bubbles that like are nice and are cool, of course, but they're exacerbated in media.
So and that's how showing how social media like can both like reveal something that maybe people haven't seen before in that example, and also take people away from reality and into these echo chambers. Which is one of the big reasons that like you're talking about like the argument, the moral argument of banning TikTok. Is that because TikTok has such a like polarizing effect on society, it's actually making it harder for people to reach agreements about what reality actually is, which I think is the baseline for having any discourse about what the solutions to that reality should be.
Another thing is like the content moderation. So like this is like a big topic like in social media the past couple of years with like Elon Musk buying Twitter and like, you know, free speech or whatever, and then like a lot of content moderation policies being like, you know, moved to an extreme and then like kind of tempered, and then like the companies are trying to adjust their policies. Like for example, like YouTube used to like immediately like give you a strike or like ban you, I believe, if you like said like stuff about the vaccine or said stuff about the 2020 election, like whether it was valid or not, like January 6th, all that stuff. And then they like reversed all of that within like the past year, I think. So like on that aspect, I feel like personally, like obviously anecdotally speaking, like TikTok's content moderation is pretty terrible. Like you'll see it moderated for like I think COVID-19, and like that's basically it. But you'll see like sometimes these like there'll be these TikToks that like exacerbate these like racial tropes of like black people or Jewish people, and then they'll have like tens of thousands of likes, but there's no label, there's nothing on it. It's just like it's like a piece of content being like floated into the ether with like no, like people are just left to come to the conclusions on by themselves. which I mean, like, I support like free speech and like having stuff on the platforms, but I think that, if we're just talking about what the effect of that is, the effect of that is bad, right? Like,
Yeah.
you can support the right for that content to be there, I guess, in principle, while also like acknowledging that like a content like that being on the platform is not, it's not beneficial to like the American population, right? Like, even with Twitter, actually this morning I was watching the Don Lemon interview with Elon Musk. It was like an
I
hour.
heard about that.
Yeah, it was, I don't know, it was kind of boring, to be honest. But like, he asked, so like even Elon Musk admitted like he allows this content to stay up, but like, to appease like the advertisers, there's two things that Twitter does. So if there's like a, let's say there's like a super like anti-Semitic or like racist tweet that goes up, what they do is they prevent it from being boosted instead of like getting it banned completely. So like, if there's a like a troll account that makes like a comment that's like racist or anti-Semitic, they just like they deprioritize that until like just be like one of the comments instead of like having people see it and then like it and then it going to the top. So it's harder for that content, I guess, to propagate if you believe like the claims of Elon Musk. And then also another thing to do is like they let advertisers choose for which type of content they want to advertise on. So like a lot of the advertisers, if you remember, like they left Twitter, right?
Yeah.
After like the free speech stuff. So he instituted this policy, which is like, you can choose which type of content you want your ads on. So like, if you don't want it on like these type of political content, if you don't want it on like, right wing content, but you want on left wing content, or you want it on whatever other stuff, you can have it there. You don't have to have it here. Yeah. So, I mean, even like that basic type of content moderation, which like even some people argue is not enough. It's not. It doesn't exist on TikTok, right?
Yeah.
So like, I feel like TikTok is like it exacerbates like people's like negative tendencies.
Plus, I think another part of the national security aspect is that China could influence the content moderation of TikTok to divide the U.S. more. Like, I saw these statistics that like there's like no Uyghur Chinese or like Chinese videos on YouTube, like, or on TikTok, like showcasing the plight, because like China doesn't want that out there, so they're like either deprioritizing the algorithm or not shown to people. Or there's like, compared to Instagram Reels, like there's like many times more pro-Palestinian videos on TikTok compared to pro-Israel videos on TikTok, and showcasing how maybe the CCP wants to push a narrative. I'm not saying that maybe it's also that TikTok skews younger, and that's why there's more Israel-Palestine or pro-Palestinian videos on TikTok, and more people are engaging with that. But I think that understanding that China could and probably would use the TikTok algorithm to push content that maybe is not pro-China but is like anti-US.
I mean, my view is a bit different. Like, I feel like TikTok is it's not like, I don't think China pushes like a pro-Palestinian or like pro China whatever stuff. I think like their method, like the method of influencing the American population, is to have TikTok as unregulated as possible. So like, if we compare TikTok in the US to TikTok in China, right? Like a lot of people have talked about this, how like China, it's like all STEM videos. Like under the age of 14, you can only use TikTok for like 30 minutes per day or like 1 hour per day for kids. And then like there's huge regulations on like the content, like because the Chinese government wants to steer like the youth into like a certain direction, right? And like, I guess all of like the degeneracy, which is like, that's a subjective term obviously, but what they deem as degeneracy, it's kind of like pushed to the side, and like you're steered towards certain
like
content.
How they're like on video games that like prevent kids from playing video games after a certain time, or playing for a certain amount of time.
So I feel like it's like a long term geopolitical like analysis you can do, where like the Chinese youth, like you see these videos on like Twitter sometimes, where like it'll be like a Chinese school with like all the kids are like in like a military formation, like not military formation, but like they're like very like
orderly,
and they have these huge assemblies where like they do these like complicated like advanced things that they teach. And like, I mean, is that propaganda? Is that real in every Chinese school? I don't know. But and then on the side you'll have like I don't know, some like extreme case of like an American school. Like there's this one video of like an American school, and they're like rapping like some song, but the song is not like, the lyrics are like some like educational thing, like how you like make raps up to like memorize stuff in school. It's like that. So they put those two together and like, oh, the West is falling and stuff. So like, I mean, that's like what, like 70% propaganda. But if you look at it through like a geopolitical lens, there could be some truth to that, where like in like 20 to 30 years, like the social media of China is like pushing citizens to be more, you know,
intelligent,
yeah, more intelligent.
Interested in like scientific topics.
Yeah.
More interested in like helping their country.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
like, and then like all American citizens are distracted with like the entertainment, with like the, whatever division comes out of this like unregulated blob that exists and stuff like that. So, I feel like that's also like an important case.
Yeah.
To
I guess we should probably pivot to like the next topic is like why people were against the ban in Congress. Like I know on the right, a lot of Republicans are talking about like free speech and how this would limit free speech, and like there was also on the left like it was sort of similar. It's like TikTok is like an important platform for spreading political messaging, and I think it's like a very big example of like how politics is like a horseshoe more than a straight line, and how like extremists on both sides arrive at the same opinion as we talked about at the beginning. Like how extremism on both sides lends itself to similar solutions.
Yeah, I mean, so here we have some examples of some politicians who disagreed. So there's this one representative. His name is Ro Khanna from California. I may be biased, but he's pretty based for the most part. But on this bill, I guess I disagree with him. He says that.
Welcome back to the Texas Uncensored Pod. After having to move a little bit, we're going to pick back up where we left off with Ro Khanna and his comments on the TikTok ban.
Yes, as I was mentioning, unfortunately, we were interrupted by someone who wanted to take over our space, our recording space in the PCL. So we've moved to this new study room. But anyway, as I was mentioning, one of the representatives from California, he's a progressive, and he said that the TikTok bill that passed last week, it wouldn't actually protect Americans, and like his argument is more like on a free speech perspective. So he's very pro free speech progressive, and he's been pretty outspoken about that issue on like in past statements online. So like he argues that like a lot of people's careers, a lot of businesses, and like TikTok basically represents a large avenue for all those people to speak through the means that they want to speak, which is like making TikToks, having a community, collaborating with other TikTokers, and like, it is a valid point to bring up that, having TikTok, let's say they don't divest, and let's say they just get banned. Like it is an important thing to note that all of these creators, like especially those who are exclusive to TikTok, and like all of these users, they will have like a big disruption to their lives, right? Yeah. Like maybe you could argue that like it would be good for the consumer end, that
it'll be good in the long run that people aren't using TikTok or aren't like addicted to social media as much. But in the short term, it definitely will hurt the people that are using TikTok right now to like sell products and get like free advertising, because if you make a really good TikTok, it's better than any advertising dollars, because it's like earned media. You're not paying anything for it, and you're getting a lot of like natural interest in your product. Yeah, like it's not going to be bad for, at least in the long term, for like the consumers. So like somebody who uses TikTok for like 4 hours a day or something, that's going to help them, at least get off of the platform. Whether they choose to spend that 4 hours with another platform is up to them, but at least it's an incentive to maybe to like stop using TikTok and maybe do something else in that 4 hours. But for the creators, it's definitely bad, I guess. Like there's no getting around the fact that there are TikTok creators who do good, and there are TikTok creators, they spread whatever message they feel needs to be spread. Like we're spreading a message on this podcast. There are creators who are business owners, and they make these products and they sell them on the TikTok shop, which I guess is like a big thing. And then just small businesses, like let's say like this one small business trends a lot and then gets a lot of followers, so it gets a lot of visitors in real life, and it helps their business grow. They'll be disrupted, I guess. So there are like people who will be disrupted, and I guess the government should try their best in accommodating those people, or having a transition. So
like let's say TikTok gets banned, they should all be able to transition from that to something else, while like maintaining as much as what they have in terms of follower base, in terms of revenue as much as possible. And I guess like you can't really ask the government to do much about that, but you would hope that other.
I mean, I think the government is doing it like by having it be like a 6-month thing.
Yeah.
They are giving like ample warning, like, hey, once this passes, you have 6 months to find
Yeah.
a new option. So I think like having it be like a longer process, because obviously they also still need to find a buyer. Like it would be really unfortunate that if they force TikTok to divest, but then no one steps up and buys it.
Yeah.
Because maybe they don't have the funds, or because China doesn't allow them to divest in the way that the U.S. government wants, that it ends up making it so that TikTok is banned. That would also be pretty bad.
Yeah, now that you mention it, like, another argument for like this being an effective ban is like since you have a 6-month period, and there's a lot of uncertainty as to whether it will be sold or not. A lot of the creators on there, they'll want to do what's safe for them to do, right? So like if you don't know whether the platform is gonna die or not, then you're gonna do whatever you can to diversify, right? You're gonna go on YouTube, you're gonna go on Instagram. And then even the user base might also do that, might follow you there. And you'll encourage your user base to go to those platforms too. So like, let's say even if it does get sold, like all these creators who are at least exclusive to TikTok, they will already be diversified. And thus like, they'll have like, whether it be small or big, they'll have separate followings on these other platforms. And this kind of ties into like, what some of the right-wing criticisms are. So like, we have some tweets from like Vivek Ramaswamy. He's an outspoken, anti-establishment figure on the right, and like he and like the Trump argument is that this gives more power to other social media platforms. So like Trump likes to claim that like Facebook took part in like stealing the election from
the enemy of the people.
Yeah, stuff like that. And obviously like as baseless as like the election claims and stuff are, it's an obvious fact that more people will be on the other platform if not TikTok, right? So
And like the ban is, or the regulation and the forced divestment could be seen as anti-competitive.
Yeah.
Especially if a company like Meta or Google steps up to try to buy TikTok. Obviously, I think that the Joe Biden's like Justice Department and like the Federal Trade Commission probably will step in to block if Meta attempts to buy TikTok. Based on anti-competitiveness, but the very fact that they're removing one let's say competitor in the social media space and bringing it under American control does lend itself to anti-competitive behavior, I think.
Yeah, I mean TikTok is really the only thing that competes with Facebook, right? Like in terms of people who use it, like Facebook is like Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, and like those three are like the big giants, right?
Yeah.
Like even if you look at Snapchat or you look at these like other small like social media things.
I mean, people don't use Snapchat like they use like TikTok
exactly.
or Instagram.
Yeah, so like you'd be removing like a big player. It's like you have like 2 internet providers in your home, and you're like removing one internet provider. So like you're kind of left with only one option. So that's like obviously not good for having the freedom of choice and stuff.
Yeah, and I think it also highlights maybe the hypocrisy of like the U.S. legislators, that they're concerned about data privacy in terms of TikTok, but they're not concerned about data privacy for consumers. In the case of like Meta, through Facebook and Instagram, which we know collect a lot of data on users, and we mentioned earlier in the podcast about how they used to track people between apps, even when you weren't on their app. They would be tracking you and trying to figure out your buying habits, how to advertise to you, how to make money off of you. And so it shows, like for me personally, I agree with banning TikTok or regulating all social media in some form of fashion. I just don't like the reason they give as to it being a national security concern, because I feel like there's other bigger things that the U.S. could be doing in terms of national security that would have a higher impact than just going after TikTok, and it should instead be framed as a way to protect people against like the harms of social media and how it's really impacting a lot of people's lives. Like I think the biggest thing for me is that like after social media came out, you see depression skyrockets, anxiety skyrockets, especially among teenagers, because they're comparing themselves and they're always like online and they're unable to like truly come into their own and like develop as their own people without like this constant watchful eye over them. And I think that is probably the worst part of social media. And I don't like that regulators, they often bring social media CEOs to the Capitol Hill. Like I don't know if you saw the Facebook thing with Mark Zuckerberg, where they're like
did you
turn
see
around and like apologize.
the TikTok CEO, like he went there and he was like, the guy was like, are you like Chinese or something?
Yeah,
CCP.
They're just like so out of touch with the way that the whole online ecosystem works because of their age, and I think also they're probably paid not to care about it by these companies, which probably just lobby a lot in order to avoid getting regulated by these legislators. So I think that the U.S. Congress should pass this, but they should do it with the intention that they're trying to protect consumers and provide like more a more equitable like social like town square, like how Twitter is supposed to be, or how other social media are supposed to be, like provide people with the ability to share their ideas rather than have it be because of national security reasons.
Yeah, I mostly agree with that. Like in my personal opinion, I guess, is like I support the bill being passed because, I think it's it's an important first step to like a large array of things that have to be addressed in like this realm of like technology. So like I would agree with the framing of the bill. Like I think that this bill should have been sold more as like towards like with the populism rhetoric rather than like national security and stuff, because like that's what all the hype is now. Mm-hmm. So selling it more as like, this is your country, your data should be in your country. Like obviously like, all people can agree that like, your data being in like the hands of Facebook is better than your hands of being in a company equivalent to Facebook in terms of how it tracks you, but it being in another country, right? Mm-hmm. At least you have some kind of indirect, like, fourth degree off say into how this data is used by your mm-hmm. ability to vote for people, right?
Yeah.
So there's that. And in terms of the free speech aspect, I feel like politicians should do a better job at addressing that concern also, because it is a concern in terms of like, all these people are losing their voice. However, whatever the justification may be, they are losing their voice. So, you want to address that. And I think the bill addresses it legally, I guess, because, it asks them to divest instead of being banned. And like a lot of the bans of TikTok have been like struck down by the Supreme Court and like other states, like district courts. But yeah, this is definitely like one step towards something that bigger that, I would like to see, which is like a comprehensive like reevaluation of how we see like consumer data itself. Mm-hmm. I think that, it's not like it shouldn't be like a controversial thing to say where like, I should have a stake in the sale of my data, right? Mm-hmm. Like, imagine a society where, each individual's data, it's like something you can choose to share and like enjoy like the fruits of sharing that data, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's like having a dividend, like mm-hmm. a data dividend. I think like Andrew Yang or somebody like a long time ago proposed this idea, but like
that was like the robot dividend, like how if like companies choose to automate away their workforce, like the U.S. consumer should see some.
Yeah, so I feel like there's a lot of revenue to be gained there, and then also when it comes to children and social media, like we generally have a lot more room to regulate things when it comes to children, because children aren't full citizens right yet. Mm-hmm. They're not like adults. So I do think that I'm growing more favorable towards the idea that you probably should not have like kids below a certain age access to social media.
Like age-gating social media.
Yeah, and I wouldn't support like a bill saying like kids this age cannot use social media, because at the end of the day it's up to the parent to decide what their kid can and can't do. But maybe regulating like the social media accounts to like say like if there's a kid that has this account, they have to have like a parent observer account. Mm-hmm. So like let's say you have a TikTok or like you have Instagram and your child has Instagram, you have your account like type can monitor their activity and restrict mm-hmm. and not restrict what they see and their time on the app and everything. But at the end of the day, everyone's gonna find loopholes to everything.
Yeah.
Especially as a kid, I would have done that if I was a kid.
Yeah,
so.
but I think that like having regulation in place,
Yeah.
so you can go after bad actors is probably an important part.
Yeah.
Like it's like I think there's this like this is a similar argument to there's like this like the legalization of sports gambling and how it saves it like brings it into the light, and so people who are struggling with it in the shadows like on like illegal sites can now like get the help they need and like have more protections. But also it like it brought it to the masses so that more people because of the freer access are gambling. So you have a larger like because you have a larger denominator of people gambling, you have there's obviously going to be more people that have problems with like gambling addiction in the numerator. I think it's the same thing. It's about how like you need to regulate something first before it especially since it's become such a problem. In my opinion, which is like steps in the right direction. Like obviously we're not going to change public perception overnight of like how people see social media, but I think that having a legislative like foundation is an important part of that.
Yeah, that's true. And then also like now that you have this bill passed, right? Like you can use it as like a backbone to build off of and work towards it. Like the bill definitely will have shortcomings, and maybe like some of the criticisms that like it could like one of the criticisms I saw of it is like it's too broad in its definition of like foreign associated company. Yeah. So like people argue that it could be used to like that like loose definition could be used by like an administration to like attack things that shouldn't be attacked, or like attack any like some company that's like maybe like this foreign government has like a percentage owned in that company, but it's like it's still like a U.S. company. Yeah. It's like, so like that probably should be addressed. Maybe there's more negotiating to be done on the bill for sure.
But yeah. I think it's also like the U.S. has done stuff like this before.
Yeah.
Like
Huawei.
Yeah,
they banned Huawei.
But also Rupert Murdoch, was born in Australia, Australian citizen, but because of foreign alien, as like that's the term that they use back then, like couldn't own more than 20% of broadcasting rights of a U.S. company. He had to give up his Australian citizenship and become an American citizen in order to keep owning Fox News and like the associated like media group. And also like we see in the UK right now, like the Parliament is drafting up laws in order to limit the influence of like foreign actors from buying their national media. Like the Saudi Arabia, like a group funded by them wants to purchase some newspapers in the UK, but they want to fight back against that because obviously they want to control what information they want. They don't want the information that they have going out on news sites to be controlled by foreign actors. And I think that's probably it gives some credence to why this bill has gone so far and why it probably will get passed, because there is precedent for in the past concerning like news organizations, and the only difference is TikTok isn't really a news organization; it's a social media company.
Yeah, I mean, to tie this like a broader political concept, I think this makes you think about like what the role of the government is when it comes to like the social affairs of people in the country. And I think like there's a saying that like as people get older or something, they get more conservative. But I don't actually think that's true. I think it's more like people have more investment in like the social affairs of their like population. So it's not really like, when I mean social affairs, I don't mean like the legality of like gay marriage and stuff. I mean more like what should we be incentivizing in society that helps everybody in the country or helps everybody around us. So like I guess like that starts with your local community, and that's like, and it's like having institutions for people to go to and like gather and like have people communicating with each other. It's like your public infrastructure and your transit being like equitable enough so that it's easy to like be together as a community and like go to common places and come back home without like big burdens on that. And then I guess it expands to like when we're talking about as a country, as we grow older, I feel like we will get more invested in having the government do things like this to get more of the social control of the population to be by the population itself and not by some kind of like like whether it be like a foreign country's platform, or it even be like our own country's, algorithms or methods of giving out information. Because like it's definitely true that the way you receive a piece of information can influence the way that you like take that information in. So like, do you agree with it or do you disagree with it? What framing of that information suits like a certain narrative which is being pushed to you. So like, I think it's important for like generally us as Americans and like the American government to kind of try and push that control of that as much into the hands of the American people as possible, so that whether we go in a bad direction or a positive direction, we at least have an outlook on like how we have shaped that growth, instead of like some type of entity, some type of government entity, some type of big business, or some type of other thing.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard this like saying by Nassim Taleb, who I've read a lot of his books, and I think some of his ideas are good. And he's like, I'm a socialist with my the people around me. I'm a communist with the people in my family. I'm a socialist in like my community. And like as he goes up the ladder, he becomes less and less progressive and he becomes more conservative. And at like the highest level, at the federal level, he's a libertarian, and he like wants as little impact from the federal government as possible, because like this is something I agree with. I think that people in Washington, like the scale of like the United States is just too big to be making such great decisions. I think that as you said, like returning power to the hands of the people to make the decisions for themselves would be an important progression.
Yeah. I would say like I agree with that when it comes to social. So I think it's important to distinguish social and like political, or like so when it comes to social influence, if we take the example of like somebody who's like very impoverished and grows up in like a terrible area with like a lot of like crime, a lot of like poor conditions. It's probably been like impacted by redlining in the past, and it's just like it's like a bad place, and it's just like it's unlucky that you were born there out of like all the places on the earth you could be born, right? If you take a person like that on like a societal level or like a non-social level, obviously there are so many societal factors that have probably had more of an impact on that person's life than like his own individual actions, right? Because like you being born somewhere and the people you're around and like the circumstances you're born into have a huge impact on like the rest of your life, like more or less, right? Because like the biggest decisions that were made in your life, they're made for you by virtue of your birth. Like, I mean, that's my view at least.
Yeah, like the postal code determines like, how much you're made.
So on that scale, it's important to take things at like a large scale and try and equalize as much of that as possible. Because like it's not, if you talk about equity versus equality, we're not talking about equity at all, but to talk about equality means that you like a lot of your determining factors should not be by the zip code you're born to, right? But on a social level, like on an individual level, if you're speaking to that individual person, you don't want to instill like this is where I guess I diverge from the left a bit. You don't want to instill in that person like a mindset of like, I'm here because of all the factors around me. All my decisions have been made for me. So, I'm kind of in this dissolute state where like
a victim mentality.
Yeah, you can say victim mentality, but like you don't want to depend on like the government. You don't want to depend on your vote to improve your own life in like that much of a degree, right?
Yeah.
So when it comes to the individual level, you want to advocate for that guy to do the best he can given his circumstance, right? So you want to like, if you take that guy and you take another guy, and one of them is like super educated on all the reasons that he's in that condition. So like all of these conditions and all these like slavery, redlining, all these like very true things that did impact him and had an impact on why he's the state he is now. And you have another guy who's completely ignorant of all of that, but he goes to church and he has like a community of people who do whatever they can within their the context of what they know and where they live to improve their lives. I think that guy would lead a happier life, and that guy would his kids maybe would have a better chance of leaving that conditions than somebody who's like super educated and everything, but he's very like black pilled. He's like very out of it. He's like this world is so unfair and everything. Yeah. So I think like we have to separate those two when we're talking about this concept. And when it comes to that, a lot of these political issues can fit very neatly into like which boxes it slide into. So yeah.
I think we'll wrap it up there. If you want, please share your thoughts with us.
Yes.
I think we're going to post this on YouTube, and other platforms. So write in the comments what you think about TikTok and all the other stuff that we talked about today. And thank you for listening.
Yes, if you disagree with us or you agree with us, whatever your thoughts are, share it in the comments. Please like, subscribe, /follow, /whatever, based on the platform. And yes, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Texas Uncensored Podcast. And I hope you join us on our journey as we grow and expand our thoughts.